All over the internet, there are tons of lies being posted about sciatica, and these lies are stopping people from fixing their problem once and for all. In this video, I'm going to bust 7 of those lies and help you get better as quickly as you can. Hi everybody, my name is Will Harlow and I'm the Over-50s and Sciatica Specialist Physio here at HT Physio in Farnham. And today I'm going to be busting 7 common lies about sciatica that are stopping people from getting better from this problem. Now, before we dive into the content of the video, if you haven't already, please hit like on this video and subscribe to the channel using the link in the bottom right, because then you'll be the first to hear about our sciatica videos as soon as they come out. And if you're enjoying this content, please consider sharing it with a friend or a family member who might benefit, because then you'll help them out and you'll also help our channel to grow. So I'll be really thankful if you do that. Now that that's been said, let's talk about sciatica and then I'll reveal these 7 common lies. So when we talk about sciatica, what we're really just talking about is nerve pain in the leg. And this can be caused by a number of different things. So sciatica is not a condition in and of itself, it's just a symptom and it's caused by several different conditions. And sciatica just means nerve pain. It can be down the back of the leg, it can be down the side of the leg or the front of the leg. Even though that's not strict sciatica because it's not relating to just the sciatic nerve, the information in this video is relevant to any nerve pain in the leg. Now, along with sciatica, people can also get pins and needles and numbness and weakness in their legs as well. So these are all other symptoms that come along with that pain that we spoke about. And sciatica can be caused by problems like disc bulges or disc herniations. It can be caused by arthritis in the spine. It can be caused by piriformis syndrome. It can be caused by things like spondylolistheses and other aging changes. And we've got other videos about all of these different topics. But let's talk about the 7 common lies that I see peddled everywhere and why they are so harmful to people who are suffering with sciatica. So the first lie that I commonly see about sciatica is that it never fully gets better. Now, if this was the truth, then quite frankly, I probably wouldn't have a job, because about 50% of my patient caseload nowadays are people who are suffering with sciatica. And I'm glad to say that we can usually get those people better. If I had to stick a figure on it, I would say probably 80% of the time we can get people a desirable outcome. And more often than not, what that means is that their pain is fully gone. Obviously, some people have cases of sciatica that we can't fix, but for the vast majority of people, it does get better. Now, what I would have you think about is, if you're reading these online sciatica forums and you're seeing tons of people posting saying, I've had this once and then it never went away, I really do feel for those people, but the population who are posting, the bias is skewed in the direction of the people who don't get better, because these are the people who tend to inhabit the forums, the ones who've tried everything and they're still looking for answers because nothing's yet worked. So if that's you, I'm really sorry to hear about it. Please do reach out to someone like myself for support. But for the vast majority of people, it will get better. And that includes things like disc bulges and disc herniations. They aren't supposed to go on forever. For most people, the disc bulge does heal back up, so the disc can knit back together. For most people, the herniation, even if the nucleus inside the disc has left the disc entirely, the body usually is pretty good at clearing it away and basically patching the area back up. And even though the place might not look exactly as it did before, usually the sciatica goes away. Now, if you've got arthritis and that's causing your sciatica, again, for most people, the cases of sciatica tend to be intermittent. It doesn't tend to be there permanently, unless the arthritis has got to quite a severe point. But sometimes it can just appear like a nerve gets trapped, and then for whatever reason, with the proper treatment, it can free up again and the sciatica can go away. So if you've got sciatica and if you're reading online that it never gets better, I just want to tell you today that that is a lie. For most people, it does get better. Obviously, there are some exceptions, but for the vast majority, you should expect to heal. Now, the second lie about sciatica is that core strengthening is the best treatment. Now, this is going to cause a lot of controversy, because I hear people talking about this to me all the time. They say, oh, I've got this sciatica, can you just give me some core exercises to fix it. And core exercises are a decent way to go about treating the problem and are definitely a good way to go about preventing it. But they aren't the be-all and the end-all. Now, a lot of people take this simplistic view that if you have a weak core, that means you're automatically going to get sciatica and you're not going to get better from it. And that is just a lie. I've seen professional athletes, I've seen gymnasts who've got incredibly strong cores who still end up getting sciatica. So if I was to give these people tons of core strengthening, it's not going to do anything because they've already got an incredibly strong core. What they need is a completely different approach. You might be saying, well, I don't have that much of a strong core and I still have sciatica. And yeah, for you, some core strengthening might help, but it's not the only thing you need. You also need mobility work. You also need strengthening of the glutes. You also need some work to relax the muscles around the back that have probably tightened up. You also need some work to improve the mobility of the nerve. There are tons of other things that need to be done. And to be quite frank, the things I've just mentioned, I usually put them higher than core strengthening in the hierarchy of importance. Now, there's other physios who might watch this and say, well, I've treated sciatica with core strengthening for years and it's always worked for me. That's fine. All I'm sharing with you is my personal approach and my personal opinion. I tried the core strengthening approach with my patients where I just did core strengthening when I first started, and my results were nowhere near as good as they are today, when core strengthening, to be honest, is about the fifth or the sixth thing down the priority list. So don't believe that core strengthening is the only thing you can do to treat your problem. Yes, it's a good way to prevent sciatica from happening because it helps you to be safer when you're bending and twisting, but it isn't the only thing you need to fix it. Now, the third lie that I see about sciatica, and this is a common one that comes from physiotherapists and doctors, is that more exercise is always better to fix it. Now, there are many instances where, yeah, exercise is the right approach. And if you've got pretty bad sciatica and you find that it's better when you're moving around, then that's a good indication that exercise is probably a good thing for you to do. But I've had many instances with people who have had raging sciatica. It's been so bad that any exercise we do seems to make it worse. And for these people, a temporary period of rest is actually a really good idea. Now, rest doesn't necessarily mean bed rest. In fact, I'd recommend against bed rest, generally speaking. But relative rest, so not doing as much walking, not cycling, not doing tons of physio exercises, is sometimes a better approach to get better. Now, this is obviously very nuanced. It's going to be totally different for everyone. Some people are going to find that rest makes it worse, while others are going to find that rest improves it. For just about everyone, there will come a time when exercise is appropriate to be introduced in, but don't believe the lies that you have to keep moving no matter what, because if that's making you worse, that's a good indication that you're not currently doing the right thing. I have a golden rule with sciatica, and it's that if something is making the pain feel worse, it's definitely not helping you get better. It sounds so simple, but I find so many people doing things that they think are helping, but are making the problem feel worse. If that's you, if a physio has told you to do certain exercises and they're making it worse, I would definitely recommend reconsidering whether those are actually the right thing to do, because the best thing for this problem is usually the thing that makes it either feel better or at least doesn't make it feel worse. So sometimes rest is better than exercise. Don't believe in sort of a golden rule of exercise that applies for everyone. If it feels like it needs a rest, then for most people, that is the right thing to do. Now, the fourth lie that I need to bust about sciatica is that the Cobra exercise always works. Now, this is something that came up in a conversation a few weeks ago on this channel. I made a video about herniated disc exercises, and I revealed that one of my favorite herniated disc exercises is the Cobra. Now, someone left a comment underneath and they said, whenever I do the Cobra for my herniated disc, it makes it worse. Does this mean I should still do it? And the answer is no. So for about 80% of people who have a bulging or a herniated disc, the Cobra will help the problem. But for the other 20%, there are 20% of people that exist where the Cobra isn't going to help. And for some of these people, it will make it worse. Now that's because all of us have slightly different anatomies. We all respond to the same exercise in different ways. And for whatever reason, the Cobra for these people is just not helpful. So if you've got a bulging or a herniated disc and you're suffering from sciatica and the Cobra makes it worse, then you should discount all the advice online that says that you should always do the Cobra, because it means that it's not the right exercise for you and you're running the risk of aggravating the problem. Now, the other group of people where the Cobra is not a good idea are people who have arthritis in their spine. And the reason this is the case is because if you have quite significant arthritis, you tend to not be able to extend backwards very well. And if you're asking your spine to extend backwards over and over and over again by doing the Cobra, really what we're doing is we're closing down the small spaces in the spine and probably pinching the nerve a little bit worse. So if you have known arthritis in your spine, or your sciatica is caused by something like spinal stenosis, then don't do the Cobra, because you probably are going to aggravate the problem. So that's a big lie with sciatica, is that the Cobra always works. It doesn't always work, and if it makes it worse, you should avoid it. Now, the fifth lie about sciatica is that it's always an old person's injury. Now, sciatica does happen to people over the age of 50, hence why I see it a lot at my clinic, but the most common group of people to get disc problems are actually men in the age range of 30 to 50, so younger than the over 50s category that I tend to treat. Now, it does happen a lot to people over the age of 50, but it tends to often be a different cause that can lead to sciatica. So problems like spinal stenosis and arthritis and disc degeneration are more common in the over 50s, but a disc bulge or a disc herniation is actually very, very common in people who are between 30 and 50. So if you've got sciatica and you're reading that, oh, this is something that tends to only affect over 50s, I don't want you to feel bad. I don't want you to feel like your spine is aging a lot quicker than it should, because it's actually also very common in a younger population. And I often get comments on this channel from people who say, oh, you make these videos for over 50s, but I'm under 50 and I've got sciatica. Is there something wrong with me? There's nothing out of the ordinary about that. It's actually very, very common for people like you to have it. So make sure you're getting the right treatment, because if you're younger, it's incredibly important you fix it the right way, because you don't want it to become recurrent. But just to have it in the first place is actually pretty common. So don't feel like anything is drastically wrong with you. You do need treatment, but it's not unusual. So don't believe that sciatica is just a problem for the over 50s. Now, the sixth lie about sciatica is that piriformis syndrome is very common. Now, piriformis syndrome is a cause of sciatica, and it occurs when the piriformis runs, or when the sciatic nerve runs through the piriformis like that, and then the piriformis gets tight and it pinches the sciatic nerve. Now, the reason piriformis syndrome is not as common as most people think is because that abnormality that causes the sciatic nerve to run through the piriformis is only present in about 10% of people. And it's there from birth, and there's nothing you can do to cause that to happen if you don't already have it. So only 10% of the population are even at risk of piriformis syndrome. The other 90%, the sciatic nerve runs behind the piriformis, safely out of risk. Now, the reason that piriformis syndrome is so overdiagnosed is because a lot of people say, well, I've got pain in my buttock and I've got pain running down my leg and I don't have any back pain. Therefore, the problem must be in my buttock, and therefore piriformis syndrome must be the issue. And I'm afraid to say it's not that simple. It's quite possible to have a disc bulge or a disc herniation and no back pain whatsoever, and just buttock pain running down into the leg. So the location of the pain does not dictate where the problem is. This is incredibly important to understand. Now, piriformis syndrome does exist, but to be honest with you, I feel that it's been overdiagnosed mostly in the United States. It seems to be incredibly common over there. We don't really hear about piriformis syndrome very much in the UK. It's not really something we believe in to be as common. In the US, it seems to be that every person with sciatica has some form of piriformis syndrome. according to many of the professionals there. But in the literature, it's quite frankly just impossible for that many people to have piriformis syndrome because, as I said, only 10% of the population are even at risk. Add to that disc problems like bulges and herniations are incredibly common. Almost everyone has a disc bulge, but it doesn't always cause symptoms. And if you're worried about it being piriformis syndrome, there are some tests you can do. Typically, if you have piriformis syndrome, movements of the lower back won't affect the pain in your legs. So that's a quick way to test it. But if you have a disc problem, movements of the back often do affect it. And piriformis syndrome doesn't tend to cause weakness in the leg. It can cause a bit of pins and needles and numbness, but doesn't tend to cause weakness. So if you've got weakness there, it's probably a disc issue. And I made another video that will help you differentiate between bulging discs and piriformis syndrome. You can see that in the top corner of the video here. But suffice to say, piriformis syndrome is not as common as everyone believes. It's actually a lot rarer. And in my whole career of treating it, I think I've only seen probably about 5 or 6 true cases of piriformis syndrome. And I'm seeing at least 3 to 5 people with sciatica in this clinic every single day. So that will give you an idea of how rare it actually is. And then the 7th and final lie about sciatica that I'm going to bust today is that disc bulges always cause pain. Now, disc bulges do not always cause pain, and what's more, most of us have a disc bulge in our spines, whether or not we have pain. Now, disc bulges are just a fact of life. They happen to almost everyone. Anyone over the age of about 30 most likely has some form of damage to the discs. We pick up this damage just by living our lives, by bending and twisting and lifting, and 99% of the time they don't cause symptoms. This is why people can often be so terrified when they get an MRI scan and it shows 3 or 4 different disc bulges in their spine. Now, most of those disc bulges have probably been there for years and you're just not worried about them. They come and they go, they heal up, and then another one will form. And most of the time we get away with it. They don't cause symptoms most of the time because they don't touch a nerve. So this is really important to understand. So it's not the disc bulge itself that causes sciatica. It's when the disc bulge touches the nerve. That's when the sciatica happens. So if a disc bulge is not coming out at such an angle that it touches a nerve significantly, you're probably not going to get any symptoms from it. So if you've had an MRI and it shows lots of different disc bulges all the way from your neck down to your bottom of your spine, try not to worry too much about it. Yes, it is a sign that you've been using your spine, and yes, we could classify it as a bit of wear and tear, but it's very, very normal. And for most times, a disc bulge is not going to cause a huge amount of trouble. Now, there was a study done by a researcher called Brzezinski and colleagues. I think this was a 2010 study, and basically they took 1,000 people off the street of a variety of ages, and they checked that all of these people were currently not suffering from back pain or sciatica, so they were symptom free. They put them in an MRI scanner, they scanned their spines, and they found that between 50 and 80% of these people had disc bulges, and the difference in percentage just depended on age, with older people having more. But remember that none of these people had back pain, and at least over half of them had a disc bulge. Now, pretty much everyone had some degree of disc degeneration, so thinning of the discs as well. I don't think they found anyone without anything at all on the scan. There was no one who had a totally pristine scan, because quite simply, we all live our lives, we all do things that cause little bits of wear and tear in our spines, and most of the time that's a normal process of living. So don't believe that every single disc in your spine has to be perfect for you to be out of pain. I probably have tons of disc injuries at the moment because of my job and because of the lifting and things that I do in the gym, but I don't currently have any back pain. So I'm not going to put myself through an MRI scanner because, quite frankly, I don't want to know. I would only want to know if I had symptoms that I couldn't fix. So that's pretty much everything that I have to say about that today. Those are the 7 lies about sciatica that I needed to bust for you today. Let's talk about what they are again, just a quick recap. So number 1 is that sciatica never gets better. Number 2 is that core strengthening is always the best way to treat it. Number 3 is that more exercise is always better. Number 4 is that the Cobra always works. Number 5 is that sciatica is an old person's injury. Number 6 is that piriformis syndrome is common. And number 7 is that a disc bulge always causes sciatica. Anyway, that's all from me. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you found it useful, please leave a comment below. And if you want to get more from me, you can pick up a copy of my book. It's called Thriving Beyond 50, and you can find it on Amazon using the link below. It's got tons more information about back problems and sciatica inside. Anyway, that's all from me. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to speaking to you on the next video.